You're watching Open Agenda. Welcome to Open Agenda on PAC 14, your public access channel. I'm your host, Mike Goldberg. I'm joined today by Joe Venosa of Salisbury and Michael Langford, also of Salisbury. Thanks very much for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
On this week's episode, we're going to recap what happened at this past week's County Council meeting. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Fire Chiefs Association, their possible participation in negotiating future agreements with the City of Salisbury Fire Department. And we're also going to discuss the possibility of AI data centers coming to Wicomico County or other locations on the Eastern Shore. So can y'all stick with us?
Definitely.
Okay, we're going to be right back after this break. Stick with us. This is Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Mike Goldberg. We're going to review what happened at the County Council meeting this past week. One of the big things that happened was the introduction of Legislative Bill 2026-05,
which is an act to amend Chapter 39 of the Wicomico County Code to recognize the Wicomico County Fire Chiefs Association as a countywide organization representing the fire chiefs of the volunteer fire departments, providing fire protection and emergency services within Wicomico County, and to provide for its participation in discussions and negotiations concerning countywide fire service agreements and policies.
All those in favor of introducing legislative bill number 2026-05, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. The introduction of legislative bill number 2026-05 passes unanimously.
Joe, tell me what you think about this. I know there were some concerns that were expressed by Salisbury Fire Chief Rob Frampton.
Yeah, Chief Frampton did speak, and I thought he did a wonderful job at sort of laying out the concern.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I'm Rob Frampton, Fire Chief for the City of Salisbury Fire Department. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the City of Salisbury regarding the legislative bill 2026-05 that you introduced. At the outset, I want to make one point very clear. The City of Salisbury values and appreciates the outstanding relationships that we have with our volunteer fire departments throughout Wicomico County. Every day we work alongside of them to serve our residents as one fire service. We have tremendous respect for the experience, dedication, and commitment of our volunteer partners, and we fully support their ability to provide recommendations on matters that affect the volunteer fire service and their own fire department budgets. However, the city respectfully opposes the provision of this legislation that authorizes the County Fire Chiefs Association to present suggestions or recommendations regarding the county appropriation to the City of Salisbury's budget. Our concern is not about the qualifications or the intentions of the Fire Chiefs Association. It's about governance and accountability. The Salisbury Fire Department is the only municipal combination fire department in Wicomico County. We operate under a completely different governance and financial structure than every other department in the county. Our department manages an annual operating budget exceeding $15 million as part of the city's overall budget of more than $60 million. We provide fire and rescue and EMS services to our community while responding to more than 17,500 calls each year, more than all the other county fire departments combined. Preparing and managing a budget of this size involves much more than emergency response. It requires balancing personnel costs, labor agreements, municipal finance, capital planning, pensions, health care, fleet replacement, EMS operations, and the shared funding responsibilities between the city and Wicomico County. These are issues unique to municipal government and require decisions that extend well beyond fireground operations. Most importantly, the city's budget is the responsibility of officials who are elected and accountable to the citizens of Salisbury. The mayor develops a budget, and the city council reviews, amends, and adopts it. Those elected officials answer directly to the taxpayers for every dollar that is received and appropriated. The city believes that accountability should remain where it belongs, with those elected to govern the municipality. While other perspectives are always welcome and collaboration is encouraged, formalizing a role for an external organization to make recommendations on the appropriation to a municipal budget creates a governance model that does not exist for any other city department and simply does not work. This position is not intended to exclude our partners or diminish their contributions. Rather, it reflects the principle that each governing body should retain responsibility for its own budget, while continuing to work collaboratively with our county volunteer partners on operational issues that affect us all. For those reasons, the City of Salisbury respectfully requests that the council remove the provision authorizing the County Fire Chiefs Association to provide recommendations on the Salisbury Fire Department's budget appropriation from the county and preserve the city's authority over its own municipal budgeting process. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and your continued support of public safety throughout Wycomico County.
Thank you, Chief Frampton.
Essentially, I think the crux of it is that this now kind of radically alters how the city and county, or at least it would theoretically radically alter how the city and county would negotiate the fire service agreements. But it would also add an element into the negotiation that, it's my understanding, would actually violate the charter. That's at least what the chief implied and what others have noted. So to some of us who live in the city, it would seem that it perhaps is a way of slanting the table a bit more toward the county in future negotiations, but whether or not that's even legal is an open question. Now, I want to say this because I also spoke myself. I'm not against having the chief's participation to some extent because it has been very important. There have been some really important contributions that many of the fire companies have made. But I guess when it comes to making a vote formally, I think that opens the door to something else that is of pretty big concern to a lot of us that are in the city. Certainly, at least the people that are in my neighborhood, that are paying double taxes anyway. This is something that I think hit people by surprise and not in a good way. That's at least my take on it for now.
Well, the Salisbury Fire Department manages a budget of about $15 million annually, and if the fire chiefs from the volunteer fire companies, they don't have any responsibility for those funds. That is a responsibility of the council and mayor. So, Michael, tell me, do you see a problem there where people who are not even going to be party to the contract actually having some say over what happens contractually between the Fire Chiefs Association and the city?
Yeah, I exactly your point, that like $15 million budget that I guess like when you're actually running a business and you're looking at an operational account and you're managing something, we're not capriciously deciding, oh, I'm going to do this aspect or that aspect. Like, these have to be spent, right? This is all for public health and safety. So that 15 million, there is like a responsibility for that. It's not, we want to allocate some of this money to this over here, or we'd like this, and especially considering it's Salisbury citizens' taxpayer money, right? It's not county residents' taxpayer money because we're being double taxed, right? So that 15 million is from city coffers. It's not the county's money. So the fact that I'm not against the county, again, there being some kind of agreement, but that agreement should be them telling us what they need from us, and then and making a fair agreement that way, not demanding anything.
Well, and to that point, even if you disagree on whether or not the Fire Chiefs Association and the fire companies have more of a say, because the actual legal financial negotiations, at least in our charter, are between the executive office and the city of Salisbury. Council just approves it. It would sort of make their participation a moot point anyway, because in the end, the two parties that are doing the negotiation are different entities, right? They're not the Fire Chiefs Association. They are the executive, the city of Salisbury, and then the council would approve it or not.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs Association doesn't really have a legal dog in the hunt. I can see relying on them for opinions, for consultation.
Absolutely,
whether
yeah.
the impacts of this policy or this, funding.
And I think Chief Frampton spoke to this. I think he went out of his way to emphasize that this is not a pushback against the fire chiefs per se. It was, you're taking away a mechanism of negotiation and process that is laid out legally in the charter, and you're bringing in something that actually has some pretty big significant changes that also may not hold up legally.
Yeah, I mean the way that $15 million gets determined is that an executive, whether it's the county executive or the Salisbury mayor in the case of the $15 million, sets a budget line item, and then the council approves it. So that's the legal framework of how the decision gets made. Nowhere in there are there like a fire chiefs association. I don't think that they shouldn't have a say, but their say is, here's what we need from you, right? And then like it's not it's not telling. They're not operationally running the thing. I mean, this is not people's caprice. This isn't just like it's just.
Yeah.
The
Fire
equipment-
chiefs don't have any management function here. You know,
No,
that is the
and they don't have
Salisbury
large. I mean, they have small budgets, but they do these fundraisers. Again, not against the fire chiefs in the county, but they just have a very different animal with nonprofits. They're structured as nonprofits, 501c3s. Like they're not a municipality or even the county government. They're something else.
And I certainly got the sense that Chief Frampton wants to hear the input from the
Absolutely.
volunteer
Always.
fire
Yeah,
chiefs.
absolutely.
He's not trying to lock them out. He just doesn't believe that they have any legal authority here over the budget, how that budget
Which
is
you said.
allocated, or how the more than 17,000 calls for service are handled by the Salisbury Fire Department on an annual basis.
And having a fiduciary duty, to people. Like they don't have that as like members of this nonprofit. They don't have a duty to the taxpayers from where they're at as fire chiefs. So, I mean, they're not there to, again, they can't set a line item on the budget.
I think it'll be good, though, because it's my understanding that there will be a work session on this in the future, I believe in August. And I'm curious to see. It's a public hearing. I'm sorry. So
Yeah, they had no
yeah.
work session.
They had no
actually.
work session.
Mr.
Yeah, that
Bob
was.
Taylor said that about these.
Good evening, Robert Taylor, a county resident. I came to speak on the two bills that have been discussed a good bit from here at the podium already, but I do want to speak at some length on the bill regarding the fire service and negotiations with the city in particular. I want to ditto everything the chief said, Chief Frampton. I think I'd even go a little bit further than that. I don't think that there should be any group that has any special entree into discussions that would include the volunteers. The code now gives them a say, too. It's not as significant as what the chiefs say would be under this bill, but it's there. And it's no more logical than if the Salisbury Fire Department had the right to negotiate regarding what the volunteers are going to get from the county. This just doesn't make sense. It's terrible policy. The chiefs, the volunteers, Chief Frampton, can come, just like he did tonight, and speak. Can always do that in these negotiations. They don't need to have anything in the code or the charter that gives any group any special privileges in this regard. But let me say this, there hasn't been, as far as I know, on either of these bills, any work sessions, have there? Did I miss something? There's been no discussion by the council tonight as to why they're even being introduced. What's the purpose? Now, there's been some substantive comment from the podium by the chief and others, but why don't we is there going to be a work session on this? Or are we just going to do this willy-nilly? What's the purpose of doing something like that? Let's have work sessions on bills, not just these, all bills.
That was actually what was so concerning about all three bills is that there was no work session proceeding, which is the procedure of how you get
how you should do it,
legislation
yeah,
passed.
yeah.
Is you have a work session in which you propose legislation and we all kind of know this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? And so the point is not to rip it apart, but to make it better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Before we go to this legislative session. But August 4th,
Yeah, that's the date.
August 4th is there'll be a public hearing on these bills.
I'm curious to see who'll show up for that as well, just to see. But I do think this does tie into this broader issue, and then I don't want to beat a dead horse on it. But the fact is, we're still in a situation as of today is basically we're at the end of the first week of July. We still don't have a fire service agreement between the city and county for the upcoming year. We've had the SWOT analysis for several years, and that's basically sat now in stasis.
Why has that SWOT analysis, and would you explain to everybody what SWOT stands for?
A SWOT analysis, you have to conceptualize it in this way. It's basically the second stage of a county-wide strategic plan, in this case for emergency services. It officially stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. Okay. Now, the thing about that is this is about framing, what we would actually do in terms of the priorities that we need for these emergency services. But the issue here is that we don't actually have an action plan to follow it up. So a strategic plan, a SWOT analysis without an action plan that's tied to it is basically just a wish list. And right now in our county, we have been in a very stagnant environment with this wish list for a couple of years. And my perspective, and I think others would share this, is that that is probably the bigger priority rather than sort of adding another convoluted approach to sort of how the city and county deal with the fire service agreement.
And again, it's not the city taxpayers' responsibility to make up for whatever shortfall the county executive is giving to the fire chiefs, right? So, like, it's kind of this misdirection to me in the sense of, like, this overcomplication. And I wanted to comment on, while we don't have a fire service agreement, that's because the county executive has been served a letter from the mayor that has been released about being billed for services. So now we're just going to be current. We're not going to recoup like losses. That money is gone. That time has passed. But moving forward, they'll be billed for services rendered to the county.
And I think the deadline for that was July 5th, if I'm not mistaken, according to the mayor.
Yeah, moving forward.
Moving forward,
Yeah. I mean, it's in progress now.
It's in progress now.
Yeah.
But if the city and the county do not come to an agreement here, the consequences of that, from what I understand, could be that the city fire department will no longer be able to provide services outside of the city limits, more or less.
Well, currently it's going to be that they're going to be billed for them, and then if they refuse to pay, then it's like it's an invoice for services rendered that you can go to a court, and and the county will be forced to pay it.
Yeah.
It won't be their choice anymore. It'll be the court's determination that this is legal because it's services rendered. Like nobody agreed. Like the fact that we had a county fire agreement that had such a discrepancy on the city for the city taxpayers is just absurd when they're, again, double taxed. Like, the city shouldn't be holding the stick here.
Right, understand.
That's our perspective as city residents, certainly. I mean, again, others would counter that. But regardless of how you feel about it, the fact that we haven't gotten to an agreement, I think in large part because the executive office just has once again dropped the ball on it. I think that speaks to the bigger problems that we have. And so I would like to see movement on those issues before we even muddy the waters with this other plan that may not even be legally binding.
You know, I mean, this is a leadership issue coming out of the executive's office, and I think when it comes to public safety, that it's extremely important that this issue is dealt with. Any idea what's holding up the SWOT analysis after a couple of years, which ties into all of this, of course?
There's been a lot of theories and back and forth about framing cost, responsibility. Again, I think the problem is, as I see it, the county executive's office hasn't really proactively pushed it. It seems to be in a position where each side of the government is more or less waiting for the other to take initiative.
Wasn't the Deputy Director of Administration, Steve Lakin, who was hired about 1 year ago, wasn't he supposed to be the liaison between emergency services and the executive's office to get this stuff taken care of?
That's my understanding, or at least that's how his position was in part framed after he was hired. And yeah, to your point, it's been a year, and we're still in a situation where nothing has gotten done.
He did have time to go to Las Vegas, though, with the executive
maybe they were working on a SWOT analysis there, but what happens in Vegas apparently stays in Vegas.
I have no doubt that they were working diligently on that while they were in Las Vegas. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll discuss more of what happened at this past week's county council meeting. Stick with us. Don't change that channel. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Here with Joe Venosa and with Michael Langford, both of Salisbury. We've just finished discussing some of the topics that were brought up at the county council meeting this past week. But there's a few other issues of concern that will be coming up in the near future, and one of which is getting a lot of talk, are the artificial intelligence, AI, data centers. That there seems to be a very significant push on a statewide level to bring these to various locations in Maryland, Wycomico County perhaps included. We're concerned about this, I think, because there's several issues associated with AI data centers. Michael, could you give us a quick rundown of what some of those concerns might be?
So I'll tell you too, what I see, I agree with you that there's a big push statewide. So what I see across the state is essentially that you have people in the legislative body or in the government who are campaign supported by a lot of these business people, these developers, right? And so they're now introducing legislation, change of language into like planning and zoning commission meetings in various counties across the state. And basically how people respond to this now determines where they're going to go in the future. Because it's like if there's a bunch of pushback, they're going to be like early on to just changing like language and defining where these things can be built in just a very rudimentary way before they're even being built. Mm-hmm. If there's that pushback, those companies are not going to go there. They're going to take that as feedback from the market that we're going to make more money over here, right? Where there's less resistance to what we're trying to push through and do with the data center. So I just see this as kind of like a, it's just they're introducing it all over, and then based on how it goes, certain people will push back, and then the places that don't, those are the places where there will be data centers.
Well, I think
I would see that pattern.
Yeah, well, and to add on to that point, Michael, it's sort of the point that pattern I think is based on the fact that the impetus for building these data centers in places like the Eastern Shore or Western Maryland is the fact that we have a lot of open space and land. And Mr. Jim Atkins out from the West Side in District 2 spoke really eloquently about this because
he did.
Data centers are large industrial facilities that can occupy hundreds of thousands of square feet while only employing 30 to 50 people, full-time people. Maryland currently has 4 counties that have either banned or have a moratorium on data centers. We talked at the last council meeting about power consumption. A large data center can consume 80,000 to 100,000 average homes. Since 2018, Maryland has retired 6,000 megawatts of power generation in the state. While they've retired 6,000 megawatts, they have only added new 1,600 megawatts. So we have seen a significant decrease in the past 8 years. Water usage is a major problem. Data centers, depending on their size, can consume anywhere from 60 million gallons per year to 110 million gallons per year. We're sitting on top of the Paleo Channel, which according to the geological surveys has an estimated 7 billion gallons of storage of water. So thankfully, it's a infinite number that can keep refilling itself. But if it didn't, think about it this way. The Paleo Channel with a large data center would be emptied in 3.8 years. We would have no water on the Eastern Shore, drinkable water. Noise pollution is a definite problem. Federalsburg, Mako sat here 2 weeks ago and told you they didn't think that the Eastern Shore was ripe for data centers. And lo and behold, the very next day, Federalsburg announces that they're having a public hearing about putting a data center in Federalsburg. So much for that belief. They say that in order to have a data center, you need electricity and water, which you do. But you also need land. Metropolitan areas don't have a lot of land. We do. We need to protect it. So I would ask, hopefully, that at the meeting in Federalsburg next week, on I believe it's the 17th, that we have some people there listening to them, seeing what they have to say. And if we don't feel that we can ban data centers in the county, maybe we need to work on legislation that would limit the amount of water usage that they have, the amount of electricity that they can have, the zoning that they can be put in, the noise that they're allowed to put out to the public. We may not be able to ban them, but maybe we can put enough restrictions on them that they won't be interested in this county. Thank you.
He laid out not just the general trajectory of what they've been doing, but actually the effects of these data centers on our energy costs, our threats to the water supply, the Paleo Channel. And I think people really need to understand the ramifications of what one data center could do. And I think as you see a backlash against them nationally and even at the state level, I think more people are going to get involved in these discussions because even though we're not seeing them right now, if the door is left open, we could see some really fundamental changes that, in my opinion, aren't going to be very helpful to the county.
One of my biggest concerns is the electrical consumption, which is going to be enormous. Interestingly, we don't generate any electricity in Maryland anymore.
We import it now, yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming from Pennsylvania and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And there certainly are no power generating stations here on the Delmarva Peninsula, in the Maryland portion at least. So the cost of building the electrical infrastructure necessary to support these AI data centers will be enormous.
And actually, there's one other point there, too, that we don't talk about. And if you know a lot of people in the contracting business like I do, or who work at the university in maintenance and facilities, they're also going to tell you that one of the other side effects of this explosion of data centers, nationally and certainly regionally, is that it's led to a shortage of other supplies that other developments are needed. So, for example, copper, right? Large-scale industrial, scale copper. Even fiberglass, just from building the data
and
centers.
The other
cables.
rare earth minerals.
Rare earth minerals.
Necessary.
So the irony is that it not only has some serious economic and environmental impacts locally that we can play out or see play out right away, but it's actually going to create more of a shortage of other things that are going to be needed for the other kinds of development that we need, like buildings where people will live, or refurbishing, a building on campus at Salisbury or somewhere else. There's a multiplier effect here on supply shortages that we just don't have as part of that conversation.
And where you have a lot of large-scale computers, it also requires a heck of a lot of water to keep those computers cool.
Well,
we don't have any lakes, natural lakes in Maryland. We don't have any reservoirs here on the Eastern Shore that I'm aware of. So where does the water come from?
Paleochannel. And it's my understanding that it would, and again, I believe Mr. Atkins said this, but others have said it too. I also think if just one data center could take away our supply of the Paleochannel within 3.8 years. And I think that's why people really need to become aware of what data centers could represent as a threat to the area.
How do we replace that water for consumption?
And you can't. You're going to import, right? And so now the cost is going to go up, just like the electricity being imported, then our water. And then imagine, 30 years ago, when you dug a well, you just had to go 50 feet. Now it's 70. Mm-hmm. So, that's before this happens. How deep will you have to, we have failing septics in the county, and you have to dig wells deeper, which costs more money to homeowners. Mm-hmm. It's getting harder to maintain outside of the city water sewer, the grid system, for people to maintain. This seems like it'd make it even harder on homeowners outside the city even.
And I've also read that there's a lot of ambient noise that is associated with these data centers. So you're going to hear the hum in the background.
I've heard up to 80 decibels.
80 decibels.
So you're talking like living next to a highway kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, the irony is minimal actual job creation long term, because I think Joe Scafino said this at a city council meeting, but once they're built, they basically have skeleton crews.
Yes.
50, maybe 80 people per center. So if you're looking at the economic impact overall, I don't see it as particularly beneficial to a community like ours.
I don't think it is either. The construction jobs are temporary jobs. Once it's built, it's built. It's done. And as with the offshore wind projects that have been proposed for Ocean City, I'm afraid that the permanent staff that will operate these data centers will be imported talent. So I just don't see how it's really going to benefit current residents of Wycomico County.
I agree. That's my concern as well. Is who's going to qualify for these jobs? So I imagine a lot of them are specialists, right? As far as whether it's an IT or whether it's some kind of specialist technician, some kind of engineer. We don't need a data center that's going to employ hardly anybody that's just a specialist.
I am concerned that Federalsburg has apparently scheduled a public hearing for the future construction of an AI data center. What do you think about that?
Well, I believe that some county officials will be attending that meeting, and I believe some private citizens will also be attending that. So
I just hope we don't
see.
mortgage our future in this county for something that I think is pie in the sky. Do we need AI data centers? Absolutely. Is Wycomico County or even the Eastern Shore the place to construct them? Personally, I don't think so. Joe, Michael, thanks very much for being here, and we're going to be back again soon with another new episode of Open Agenda on PAC 14. We'll look forward to seeing you then. I'm your host, Julie Giordano. Nah, that messed me up.
Don't be so funny.